What's up, everybody? Cole Sands Fishing here. I've had a lot of people asking the past couple of weeks about big swim bait fishing. What baits to throw, when to throw, what to buy, and all that stuff. And there's really not a perfect answer for anything. And I'm not the best big swim bait fisherman out there by far, but I'm a pretty decent one. And I've thrown them a lot, and I've learned a lot over the years. I'm just going to kind of try to help y'all in your decision-making process as you go out to throw them and as you go out to buy them. There's millions of different swim baits out there. Today, we're going to talk about big swim baits. We're going to talk about glide baits, wake baits, line throughs, and harness style swim baits like a mag draft. We're not going to talk about hollow bodies today because that's a whole nother topic, and that's for a different time. We'll talk about that later on. But we'll kind of break it down into three sections and then kind of go from there. So for starters, let's talk about glide baits. We got glide baits in the market that some of them are selling for 20 to 40 bucks, and some of them are going for a couple $100s. It's really how much you want to spend on it. And each one has a little bit different action, and that's a big thing too we'll go into. But really, for me, I throw a lot of the not as expensive ones. My younger brother likes some of the high dollar ones, and there's a time and place for all of them, but and a lot of it comes down to the action. But for me, a couple really good ones that are pretty affordable. The Hardcore Ninja Glider, I think they discontinued this one, but if you get your hands on some, I've caught more fish on that one right there. And not just this color, but all of their colors. I've got more fish on that one right there than any of them. Another good one that's very affordable is the S-Waver Glide. That's a pretty good one. Arashi makes an affordable one. And then another one that's pretty affordable is the Bait Sanity Antidote. All of these, are under $50. And, you can buy one of these. It's going to hurt if you lose it, but it's not going to hurt near as bad as losing one of these, hand-carved ones that's a couple $100s. But, so those are a couple I like on the cheaper end. As you go into the more expensive end, you got the Mike Man Zones, the Fish 30 Acres, the 316 Workhorse, which I wish I had. That would be a sweet swim bait to have, but I haven't acquired one of those yet. But really, I keep it pretty simple. This is my go-to one, and when I like to throw it. Now, a glide bait is a bait you can catch fish on year-round. I mean, that's one thing you got to realize to start with. In the dead of winter, even if the water is really cold, you can get kind of a tighter wobbling glide bait and just fish it slow, almost like a jerk bait, and still catch fish, even if the water is really cold. But from what I've seen, when I start catching them on a glide bait, the magic water temp is when it gets around 52, 53, when it starts getting in there to about 65, somewhere around there. So yes, a lot of time it is in the spring. Now, with that being said, I do get on a fall bite as well as that water starts to cool down to the 50s. November, December, I really get on a good glide bait then too. Glide bait bite then too. But so when it comes to colors, my go-to, and there's not a whole lot of brands that make this kind of a chrome one, but sun and wind is my best glide bait day. So I want it to be sunny and a little bit of wind. That's when I really catch them on a glide bait, it seems like. I like one that has kind of a metallic finish or kind of a chrome finish, especially in those conditions. When it is overcast or something, overcast, maybe the water's a little bit off color, I've caught them really good on a bone one. But it seems like I have to have overcast conditions or some muddy water to catch them on that bone one. Now, with that being said, if you're in a lake with a lot of trout, and you don't even have to have trout to catch them on a trout pattern, but, a trout pattern's always good, and then just the natural pattern's also good. It just kind of depends on the watercolor a lot, what the fish are eating. But most of the time, I'm trying to draw the fish from a long way away, and that's the power of a glide bait. You get to see a lot of fish. You might not catch them, but you'll see them come out of cover. Maybe I can come back in a couple hours and throw a different swim bait, or maybe I can even just throw a Cinco in there and catch that fish. But it's a good bait to find fish. My favorite time of year to throw it, like I said, I like it with the water temp seems to be the biggest deal, but pre-spawn, as the fish are getting ready to spawn, they're setting up, getting in the back of their pockets. I love it. Usually you can get away with, the bigger glide baits, and then I also like it right after the spawn. It's good in the spawn to find the fish, but a lot of times I won't commit to it. But that's my favorite time of year to throw it. With that being said, I have caught some in the summer over grass, and I've caught them doing different things. But My favorite time of year by far is the spring, right before they spawn and then right after they spawn. One thing I really target when throwing these is wind-blown stuff. You know, like I said, I like sun and wind, but anywhere you think there might be a group of big fish out, whether it's wind-blown points, that's one of my biggest things. Wind-blown points, wind-blown laydowns. It's good, you know, on bluffs. One thing I don't catch a whole lot of fish on is throwing this up under docks. Now, with that being said, I catch them on the edge of docks where it meets the sun. But when it comes to throwing it under docks in the shade, I do a lot better. I'm more of a mag draft style. And that's probably not always true, but like I said, I throw this around the docks, but if I'm really throwing it up under the docks, I just don't get all that many bites of the glide bait for whatever reason. But yeah, so that's kind of my glide bait spiel. Now, one more thing with the glide baits. A big thing is the action of these things. So you got like this hardcore one and the S waiver that have a pretty similar action. Same way with this antidote. And it's just kind of a nice, gentle glide. And I feel like this action works more than anything else. Now, with that being said, there's a couple weeks that happen here in April and even May when they like a super wide glide. This is a really good one, this Mike Man Zone. It's got a super wide glide, and it just, something about it attracts the fish a little bit more, and it just gets some really big bites. But it seems like that week or two right before the spawn, and even a little bit during the spawn, that super wide glide just seems to, for some reason, work a little bit better. And like I said, it's usually April here on Lake Chickamauga. It's like when that water gets in the low 60s, something about it then, it really seems to shine. But that's pretty much it on glide baits. As far as setup, I like to throw 20 or 25 pound fluorocarbon. I like my glide bait to stay, you know, within a foot of the surface most of the time, unless it's super cold. Now, with that being said, I know people who will throw weighted hooks on these in the summer, get them down over brush piles, and in the wintertime, they'll do the same thing. And that's something you can do. When I throw it most of the time, I'm watching my bait come back, and you just want it to kind of glide back and forth and just kind of a real, you know, consistent, methodical motion. Then every now and then I'll kind of give it a quick, you know, maybe 2 jerks to the reel handle. I usually throw like a 6:4 to 1 gear ratio. Like I said, 20 or 25 pound T7 Yo-Zuri fluorocarbon. And then for my rod, I throw a 710 heavy action. It's actually an extra heavy. It's a 710 extra heavy glass rod though. I like mine on a glass rod. It's got a good tip. It's a Witch Doctor tackle rod. It's got a good backbone as well. But the latter half of the rod, it's got a really good glass tip, so you can pull into it without pulling the hooks away from the fish. Because a lot of fish will follow that glide bait and they'll just kind of nip at it and hit the side. And a lot of times when you hook them, you'll have one hook just kind of in the corner of their mouth. So you want a glass rod. From what I've seen, I feel like my hookup ratio, my land ratio is a lot better. But let's go on to a different style of swim bait. So that's the glide bait. Like I said, it can work year round. Definitely a springtime killer. But another bait that works really good at certain times is a weight style bait. And there's a lot of different ones out there. You know, there's you got bull shads and little weight baits and, you know, big ones and rats. And there's a lot of different stuff. But from what I've seen, when I do good on a weight bait, it kind of depends on which weight bait I'm throwing. So this is a little hardcore noisy. And this style, this is kind of a smaller swim bait, but it's kind of just a real slow, methodical. You're reeling this at a slow speed. And, you know, it's got a little prop on the back. When I do best on this is in the spring when the water first starts to get in the mid 50s. When that water is about 53 to 56, I'll throw that out there and just reel it real slow. I like it on like 15 pound braid. But you can also throw it on monofilament and it just kind of goes back and forth like that. That little tail spins. You can even pop it and that little tail spin on the back like a devil's horse. But that's when I do good on that style. You know, it's kind of like a long A or something like that. It really seems to shine in the spring when that water starts to get into the 50s. I've even seen in the high 40s, like when the water's in the 48 to 50 degrees, you can even start catching them on that. Besides that, you know, there's stuff like the MS Slammer, and that's a, you know, kind of a bigger style weight bait. And this is really good from what I've seen, 2 times a year. It's good when that water gets in the mid-50s. It's a bigger bait. So, I mean, I'll catch them on it even in the summer over grass that's almost topped out. But it's really, you know, just kind of a good slow, but it's a lot wider wobble than, you know, this one. This is kind of it looks like it's a wider wobble, but when you throw it, it's kind of a real subtle deal. This one kicks back and forth pretty good. And I do best on this one really in 2 situations. One is at night, and 2 is over grass that's almost topped out. But something about that swim bait at night just seems to do really good. And at night, I am throwing it over grass a lot of times as well. But it's just a bait that, you know, just has a lot of drawing power, and it, you know, has a really big wobble. So that's kind of when I throw it. And then lastly, for wake baits, we got the bull shad. And this is a, you know, a fan favorite by many. And there's a lot better bull shad fishermen than me out there, don't get me wrong. I don't throw it a ton, like some people do, but I did have some good success on it last year. And what it seemed like to me, really, I start catching them on it in April, and then it can be good all year. But it seems like it's really, for me, it does best around grass. And my favorite thing to do, I put this on 20-pound fluorocarbon, and I throw it out there on a 7.6 heavy rod. And this is actually a good bait to throw that glass rod as well. You throw it out there, and you burn it as fast as you possibly can. And I had some good days last year, just throwing that over grass clumps, getting on some grass lines, really from July through, I guess, July through October. You get on them grass lines or over them grass clumps and just burn as fast as you could, and them fish would come up and hit it. It's one of them deals you can reel it so fast, it's kind of like the fish didn't have time to react. You know, they didn't have time to think about it. If the fish are just kind of in a lethargic mood and you really got to have something come through there quick for them to react, that's when that bull shad really shines. Another time I have seen in the spring when they get super shallow, and, you know, maybe it's March or April, if them fish are in like a foot of water, you can throw that up there and just burn it by them, and you can catch them sometimes if they're in an active mood. But for me, the best was summertime, and it seemed like I had to have some nasty weather. That's probably not true for the swim bait always, but my best days on that have been when it's you know, July, August, September, and it's rainy and just nasty weather. I can burn that and catch several fish, and usually a couple big ones. But that's really it for wake baits. There's a bunch more out there, but that's kind of my 3 go-tos right there. So let's go into the last one, and this is kind of a big category, and that is it's the line through and the mag draft. And I'm going to try to keep it pretty simple. Like I said, there's a lot of different swim baits out there, and a lot of different brands, and a lot of great brands. But we're going to talk about which ones I like to throw, and I keep it pretty simple because, like I said, man, it can be so overwhelming, but I keep it pretty simple. So when it comes to springtime fishing, let's say early spring pre-spawn before they get on bed. There's really 2 swim baits I really like to throw. And let me get a couple out here real quick. Alrighty. So, pre-spawn, right? The fish, let's say the water's high 40s to mid to upper 50s. The fish aren't thinking about going on bed yet. They're still kind of their wintertime deals, maybe a little bit deeper. Let's say 4 to 12 foot. That's when I really focus on 2 different swim baits. The first is a 8-inch mag draft. And I throw an 8-inch mag draft instead of a 6-inch because an 8-inch mag draft, it has a lot faster sinking rate than the 6-inch does. So with this, I throw it on 25-pound fluorocarbon, Yozuri T7 fluorocarbon. Throw this on a big rod. Usually, I mean, this is a heavy bait. This thing is huge. I throw this on a 710 extra heavy. It's the same rod I use to punch. And like I said, 25-pound fluorocarbon. And I'm using this to try to catch just some of the biggest fish in the lake. Where this bait really shines is creek mouths, ditches, over brush piles. I mean, there's a lot of places where this thing can shine. I do cover a lot of water with a big swim bait like that. And the reason is I'm just trying to get some of the biggest fish, you know, out of the lake to come up and hit that thing. When it comes to colors, I keep it pretty simple on the mag draft deal, especially the 8-inch. I throw the nude rainbow a lot, and then really I throw that whiteback shad, and that's about the 2 colors I throw on it. Another swim bait that works really good then is a little bit more weedless, is a 3/16 top hook. And top hook means it's the line through, you stick the line through and it goes back through there. Top hook, you rig it where the hook's on top of it like that. Well, you're actually going to rig it flush. So once you put the line through, the hook's like that. And what that does, you can reel that thing, especially when it gets really cold in the winter, you can reel that thing right on the bottom. And a Huddleston's another good bait for this. I don't have any Huddleston here right now. But that bait right there is really good, really year-round. It just kind of depends on the depth range for me. But that's a top hook 3/16. I throw this bait in the summer. I throw it on the ledges. It takes a long time to sink, you know, so you got to wait for it to fall down there. But this is a bait, if you're fishing in that 5 to even 20, 25 foot range, that's a bait that I really like to throw. But it's a really good pre-spawn bait. Now, once they spawn, after the spawn, I really stop throwing that 8-inch mag draft. That's really almost an exclusive pre-spawn bait for me. Now that 3/16 top hook, I'll throw that thing year round. And I don't get a ton of bites on it, but it seems like the bites I get are usually giants. But besides that, you know, as you go closer to the spawn, another one I like to throw is the bottom hook 3/16. And I really like this one when I have a specific target to throw at. This one right here, it does not sink very fast at all. It stays towards the top of the water column. I mean, this thing goes maybe 2 or 3 inches under the water, and you can almost watch it the whole way back. When I like to throw this one, if I have a specific laydown, I know there's a big one at. If I have a specific, maybe it's a spring or a rock or a clump of grass, that's when I throw this one because it's so slow. But what I like about this one, especially in the early spring and as they start to spawn, is you can reel this thing, I mean, just super, super slow. I mean, just grind this thing, just super slow. And what that does is it keeps it in the strike zone for a really long time. If you know that, man, this place looks perfect for a big fish, you can throw that thing up there and just grind that thing through there. And that tail's going to kick back and forth. And then big fish, you know, them big 5+ pound fish. And you'll catch some little fish on this. Don't get me wrong. One of the biggest misconceptions is these big swim baits only catch big fish. I catch so many 1 and 2 pound fish on a big swim bait like that. It'll blow your mind. Same with the glide baits. But if you can throw that in there where you know there's a big fish, he's probably not going to be able to resist it. So that's a good swim bait to throw pre-spawn. I had some good days this spring throwing it over some grass. And what I'd usually do with that swim bait, I would find a group of fish with like a rattle trap or a chatterbait or something like that. And then I'd go back through there with that swim bait. Once I knew that there was, you know, fish specifically on this cast, maybe it's this clump of grass or this point, I'll take that thing and I'll throw it there and I'll just wind it through there real slow. And I could usually get the biggest fish out of the school to come up and hit that. But, you know, going forward, so we talked about mag drafts a little bit, the big ones. We talked about 3/16. And this thing comes in several different sizes. This is the 6.75 inch. I throw it a good bit. They make an 8-inch. I throw it some. And then kind of my go-to when the spawn starts is really 2 different baits. The first one is, this is a 3/16 as well. It's just the smaller version. This is the 5-inch. The 5-inch only comes in a bottom hook. And I really like this one around the spawn. The reason is during the spawn, the fish nip, you know, they'll nip at your bait a lot. I go to the smaller profile. And what I really like this bait for during the spawn is covering a lot of water. You know, a lot of times during the spawn, I'm looking with my eyes, you know, got my sunglasses on, I'm looking for spawning fish, but I'll throw this thing in front of the boat as I'm looking for fish. You know, as I'm looking for the next bedding fish. And what happens a lot of times, you'll catch a lot of the fish before you even get up to them on that thing. And that's really when that thing shines. This bait also skips really good, which is pretty cool if you like to fish docks. Catch a lot of fish around docks with it. And really and the same way with the 6-inch mag draft, a big thing with it is you just, in that time of year, April, when the fish really push on the bank, the swim bait's really good because you get some of the biggest fish in the lake. Let's say you're at a tournament where it's just a 2 and 3 pounder beat down, and you have to figure out how to catch just a 4 pounder each day or just a little bit better size. A swim bait's a good way to get just a little bit better average, especially these 5 and 6 inch swim baits, because you just catch so many fish on them. I mean, you think you're just only getting a couple swim bait bites a day, but if that swim bait bite's really happening, you're going to catch 30 or 40 fish a day on these smaller swim baits, these 5 and 6 inch swim baits. But yeah, so I like that smaller 5 inch 316 during the spring. And really, I throw it on everything, whether it's laydowns, whether it's docks, flats. I'm throwing that thing everywhere, looking for the next spawning fish. And it's just a good way to get big bites. Another bait I'm doing the same thing with is a 6 inch mag draft. It's a very similar style bait. It goes only about a foot beneath the surface at most, and you keep it close to the top, and them fish will come out of them trees. And it's some of the most epic bites you'll ever see, because them fish are coming from the specific targets and coming up and just crushing the bait. And it's a really cool bite. But so that's kind of the basic. That's the ones I like to throw. As far as the 6 inch version of the mag draft, I like the pearl shad and the whiteback shad a lot. The 316 5 inch. I think that's not in the right pack, but that's I think that's Clear Lake Ghost, or I think that's Clear Lake Ghost, but that's a Clear Lake Hitch. I throw that color a lot. Keep it pretty natural on the swim baits, especially that style, whether it's the mag draft or the 316. And there's a lot more out there. Like, these are just a couple. There's a lot of great ones. But, go out here, don't overwhelm yourself with the hundreds of different ones. Get some of these. You don't have to spend a couple $100 to have a good glide bait, like I said, or a good swim bait. You can get, you can get this hardcore glide bait if you can find one. I know they're getting hard to find, but you can get it for, I think it's like 35 or 40 bucks. And there's some other good ones out there, like I mentioned earlier. But just get out there this spring. This is the perfect time of year to gain some confidence in it. And the biggest thing I can tell you, throwing a big swim bait, keep it in your hand, especially with the glide bait deal and the 8 inch, swim bait deal. You just have to keep it in your hand, get some confidence. And then once you get that confidence, man, it's a fun bite. It catches some of the biggest fish in the lake. And, it's just a ton of fun. But hopefully it helped y'all a little bit. I know I stumbled through that a little bit, but good luck on the water this spring. I hope you catch some giant fish. And I'll catch you in next week's report. Thanks, guys.